Hello, everybody, and welcome to predictions for Week 14 of the NFL season. Last week, with the full 16 games, I went 11-4. This week, we got 13 games to go over. Before diving into all of them, I want to quickly say if you are new, subscribe. We really appreciate it. Leave a like while I did as well, and comment down below any predictions you have for the week that might differ from mine. As there's some really good games this week, so there's a good chance they're going to. And with that being said, let's dive right into it with the first matchup being already what is probably going to be the game of the week as the Green Bay Packers take on the Detroit Lions on Thursday Night Football. Packers at 9-3, Lions at 11-1, and the Lions at 3.5 point favorites. This game is going to be a bloodbath. Both teams' offenses are playing really well. Both teams' defenses are playing really well. I have zero idea and zero confidence in whoever I was going to pick in this one because it's going to be a really, really damn good game that can go either way. I wish I had like a proper coin to toss for this one, but I don't. So going based on instincts for this, it's in Ford Field. I know and again, both it's tough. It's a tough one to pick. I really like what I'm seeing from Green Bay, and I really like what I'm seeing from Detroit this season. The Lions are banged up, so that's definitely did scare me, but I'm picking the Lions either way. In Ford Field, I think they have what it takes. This is a big time matchup. They clinch a playoff spot with a win in this one. So they're definitely going to be playing for that. And they need to keep their division lead against Minnesota somehow. And it's a fantastic game on Thursday Night Football. I have the Lions to win. Yeah. Next up, the 2-10 Jacksonville Jaguars make the trip to Tennessee, who are 3-9 and 3.5 point favorites. Will Levis has been playing pretty well the past few weeks. The first half against Washington last week wasn't great, but the second half he played well. And then obviously against Houston, he played fantastically. But on the flip side, Mac Jones did play a great second half against Houston for Jacksonville. But neither of these two teams are really more so looking to play spoiler, and they're playing spoiler to teams who aren't in the race in this week. When it comes to Jacksonville, they just haven't been showing a lot to me. It's been a really, really disappointing season for them, which after the collapse of last season probably should have been expected. But still, I don't know what's wrong in Jacksonville. Doug Peterson's probably. I'm so surprised Doug Peterson hasn't been fired yet. That's how bad things are going over there. At least with Tennessee, they have a first-time head coach and they're finding their way forward. They have a talented roster, but I don't know. I feel like Mac Jones is going to make a big difference in this one. For some reason, I have Jacksonville winning. I'm not confident about it. Same way like I always picked Tennessee, I wouldn't be confident in it. But the way Mac Jones played against Houston, I feel like was a really solid performance that can be built upon against Tennessee. Meanwhile, the way that the Titans played against Washington, it wasn't the greatest. I mean, yes, it wasn't good. I'm not even saying it wasn't great. It wasn't good. But at the same time, like Washington's a really good opponent. This might be a defensive slugfest. It might be an offensive roller coaster. Who knows? Nonetheless, I'm picking Jacksonville to come out on top. Next up, the New York Jets at 3-9 head to South Beach. They play the Miami Dolphins, who are 5-7 and 6.5 point favorites. Both teams looking to bounce back. The Dolphins, a tough loss on Thanksgiving to the Packers. They have the extra 3 days rest, and it's going to be helpful in this one. But in that time frame, a lot has come out about this locker room. Don't know how much of it is true, so I won't touch on it too much in this. Probably be a video during the offseason about all of that. But still, Miami has a shot at the playoffs. If they win out and get lucky a bit, they're in. But not holding out hope for it. Meanwhile, the Jets have lost 7 of their last 8 and just not playing well offensively. They had a decent first half against Seattle, but it was really, really aided by the fact that Seattle's special teams played terribly in that first half. But come second half for New York, they got shut out, and the defense just hasn't been playing well this season. The Jets as a whole are a mess. They're still forcing Aaron Rodgers to play despite the season basically being over. In part probably because he has that Netflix docu-series coming out, which is going to be a whole other ordeal. In Miami still has a lot to play for. They're looking to prove themselves a little bit, I guess, this season. The big thing is Tua has never lost to the Jets in his career. I have Miami to win, and yes, I am a Dolphins fan, but I think that trend continues. Because even last year and 2 years ago, when the Jets defense was playing phenomenally well, Tua was still playing well against them. And now in a down year for this Jets defense, in a year that it seems like the Jets locker room has no idea what's going on, I expect Tua to still have that kind of success. The main thing I'm hoping for, though, is to finally get this ground game going for Miami. We'll see if that happens, but even if it doesn't, nonetheless, I have Miami winning this game. Next is the Atlanta Falcons at 6-6, making the trip to Minnesota, who are 10-2 and 5-point favorites. The Falcons had their chance last week. Their defense was playing really, really well against the Chargers offense, but Kirk Cousins struggled against that Chargers defense, and now he's about to go up against a defense that is arguably tougher to go against in Minnesota's. So that's something to keep an eye on. When it comes to Minnesota, though, the offense isn't looking as electrifying as it did in previous weeks earlier on in the season, but they're still playing well. Sam Darnold has calmed down when it comes to the interceptions he threw over the past like two week span, a little bit earlier in the season. And since then, he's been playing really well. The run game isn't working as expected, but Atlanta's run defense is a really good run defense, so I don't think that'll be a factor that much anyway in this. I am expecting Minnesota's defense to have a really good game. Again, Kirk Cousins threw 4 interceptions against the Chargers last week, and that's a defense who doesn't throw nearly as many disguises at you compared to Minnesota and how they play their defense. So it's going to come down to Kirk Cousins is back in Minnesota for Kirk. It is a revenge game, and I'm sure he wants to play really well for it, and there's a chance that that does fuel the team. But the main thing is going to be Bijan Robinson. If Atlanta kept focusing Bijan against the Chargers, I feel like they would have won that game, but eventually they moved away from him to allow Kirk to just throw the ball a lot, which I did not like that idea going into it. If they can get Bijan to cook in this game and really play well and allow Atlanta to control the ball and control the clock, I do like their chances a bit more. I just don't see it happening because of how good this Minnesota defense is. I have the Vikings to win. And this game could either be a completely defensive focused game similar to that Chargers Falcons game last week, or it could just be a mess of chaos similar to that Vikings Cardinals game of last week. But nonetheless, I do think Minnesota will come out on top. The New Orleans Saints at 4-8 and 5-point favorites make the trip to the New York Giants, who are 2-10. I'm not sure who is starting for the Giants in this one, whether it's Drew Lock or Tommy DeVito. Either way, might have an impact in this, but I don't think it will. The Saints were as weird of a team they have been this season. They've had the moments of playing really well, and even against the Rams last week, they had their chances in that game. The defense was playing well throughout the majority of it. It was just the offense who didn't quite show up, in part because they're dealing with some injuries on their own right. But still, this Saints team can turn it on the fly if they need to, and they have their moments of playing well. Meanwhile, the Giants, even in their wins this season, I haven't felt like they were the better team in those games. They have a lot of talent on that defensive side, but they're just not getting the talent to produce how they wanted to. On the offensive side of the ball, it is a complete mess over there. Even with getting Daniel Jones out to build it is still just inconsistent play and just not enough going on. I do really like Drew Lock though, and he's a guy who I feel like if given a better situation could be a better backup or potential starter in the league, similar to like a Sam Darnold. But nonetheless, I have the Saints winning this game purely because I don't trust the Giants defense at all, and I have a little bit more faith in the Saints defense, especially against the respective offenses. But it's going to be a tough matchup. It's a Southern team going on the road to a Northern city. We'll see how it plays out, but I can't have faith in the Giants this season after what they've shown me and the amount of times I've picked them to win and it just come back to bite me. So I do have the Saints winning this game. The Carolina Panthers at 3-9 make the trip to Philadelphia, who are 10-2 and 12-point favorites. I understand why Philly is 12-point favorites, but I wouldn't be shocked if this game is closer. But the big thing is Saquon Barkley, he's probably going to run wild against this Carolina defense. Look at what Bucky Irvin and Rachaad White did last week for Tampa. They were having career games almost, playing fantastically well. Saquon is about to cook in this game. But on the flip side, I'm curious on how this Eagles defense plays against a kind of rejuvenated Bryce Young. Bryce Young has been playing really well this season, or at least since coming back from being benched, and is kind of, again, rejuvenated this Panthers team. They're a team that is now kind of has a new confidence to them of, hey, we can play these really, really good teams close and put a scare into them. They did it against Kansas City. They did it against Tampa. Can they do it against Philly? Probably, but I'm not banking on it. I want to see Jalen Hurts throw the ball a bit better in this game against a secondary that at times can be good. They did pick off Baker Mayfield twice last week, But for the most part, they're nothing truly special. I have the Eagles winning this game, primarily just because of Saquon Barkley. If he doesn't have another 150 plus yard game in this one, I'm gonna be shocked. But I mean, if Philly more so leans towards Jalen Hurts in the passing game, then I could see this being closer than a 12-point spread. But that's besides the point. I have the Eagles winning this game with what should be relatively ease. Some more divisional play is next as the Cleveland Browns at 3-9 make the trip to Pittsburgh, who are 9-3 and 6-point favorites. This could be a tricky game. The Browns did beat Pittsburgh 2 weeks back during the Snow Globe game. While I don't know the weather forecast for this one, I do know that Jameis Winston just threw for 500 yards and 4 touchdowns against Denver's defense, which is one of the better defenses in the league. And yes, he did throw 3 interceptions, including 2 pick sixes, but that's also because he threw the ball 60 plus times. And he's not going to be asked to do that again. They're going to rely a bit more on Jerome Ford and Nick Chubb in this game, I feel. So that's definitely something to keep an eye on. Meanwhile, Pittsburgh's offense had their own uncharacteristic showing last week against Cincinnati, with Russell Wilson throwing for nearly 400 yards and 4 touchdowns, playing really, really well. That offensive performance was fantastic. It was against the Bengals defense, who is one of the lesser defenses in the league. So I do think what Cleveland showed was more impressive, but still both impressive on their own right. The Steelers defense was the underperforming unit for the Steelers last week. They gave up 38 points to the Bengals offense, which typically wouldn't be anything to do like, okay, not anything to like truly pin on them, but it's the fact that this Steelers defense this season has been a really good defensive unit and has been the reason they've won games this year. But the fact that they played that poorly was really concerning to me, especially TJ Watt, who besides that strip sack he had, again, didn't do a whole lot. And against Cleveland 2 weeks back, he was completely shut down. So once again, a matchup between Myles Garrett and TJ Watt, who's going to make the plays when needed for the respective defenses. And can Jameis Winston just tune down the interceptions? We'll see. I have the Steelers winning this game in Acrisure Stadium. We're gonna call it Heinz Field. In Heinz Field, in Pittsburgh. That crowd's going to be electric. It's going to be a big time game for the Steelers. They have a lot to go for them. With that Ravens loss last week, they're sitting really good in the division standings, looking to keep up and improve on it. They have already clinched their 21st straight winning season, which is insane. But nonetheless, I like what I'm seeing from Pittsburgh. That offensive showing was impressive. And against a Cleveland defense last week who didn't do a whole lot, maybe we see more flashes of it. I have the Steelers winning nonetheless. We have a Super Bowl rematch this week, going back to 2002 as the Las Vegas Raiders at 2-10 play the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who are 6-6 and 7-point favorites. The Raiders nearly upset the Chiefs last week in a game that they would have upset them if it wasn't for just miscommunication on that final play. But their defense played really well. The offense played decently well. They did really step up in that fourth quarter. But obviously would have liked to see a bit more, but the Chiefs defense is a really good defense. The Chiefs offense is like a little bit of a lackluster offense this season, so it makes sense why the defense played that well. Meanwhile, Tampa, an offensive showing that could have been better, part because of the interceptions that Baker threw, but the ground game played phenomenally well, and that's something that the Raiders kind of struggled with last week, or at least has been struggling with the past few weeks relatively. And a passing game that, when it's going, it is going. They're a tough passing offense to beat for that Tampa has. And with Mike Evans being back and seemingly in full force, it's going to be a fun one to watch. I have Tampa winning this game in part because it is in Tampa, and that cross-country trip is a tough one for teams to make, especially teams like the Raiders who don't have a lot to play for at this point in the year. But, I mean, they still have a shot. They nearly beat the Chiefs last week. I'm not completely ruling them out. That 7-point spread is interesting because of the fact that the Raiders have played really good teams relatively close this season. So we'll see, but nonetheless, Tampa finds a way to win. They beat Carolina in overtime last week, in part because of missed field goals, but you win. A win is a win nonetheless when you're Tampa and you are tied for the division spot at this point. I think they extend that. I have them winning this game. A game that could decide the NFC West. The Seattle Seahawks at 7-5 make the trip to Arizona, who are 6-6 and 3-point favorites. This game happened 2 weeks ago in a game that Seattle's defense dominated. The offense didn't play that well, but it was the defense who was on full display for Seattle 2 weeks ago when these two teams last played. Since then, Seattle got a big time comeback, come from behind win against the New York Jets. Meanwhile, the Arizona Cardinals fell in heartbreaking fashion to the Minnesota Vikings. Even with all that being said, it was reported shortly after the games, or like right before these past week games, that part of the reason why Arizona struggled was because of the crowd noise in Seattle, which is a completely fair and understandable way to struggle. Seattle is one of the loudest stadiums in the league. This game was being played in Arizona, so it's going to be interesting to see how that plays into a factor into it. I do still like Arizona to win this game. I had them win in the first meeting, but obviously didn't play out how I expected it. This game being in Arizona definitely does lean me towards Arizona and that impact that it has. But also just because Seattle's special teams had a really bad week last week. The offense had a really rough week against Arizona's defense 2 weeks ago, and that was at home for Seattle. The main thing is, can Arizona's offense finally step up and play at that level that they can play at? They've shown it this season that they can be an electrifying offense. Can they do it in this game? And I think the steps they took last week to get to that point are going to allow them to reach that potential this week. Marvin Harrison Jr. got a lot more targets and a lot more looks last week against Minnesota. I expect that to happen again this week. Trey McBride, phenomenal tight end, also had a good showing last week. I think he'll have another good showing this week, as that's exactly what happened against Seattle last time these two teams played. He was a phenomenal weapon for Arizona's offense. I do have Arizona to win. Things would be a big time game, and again, the winner of this probably wins the NFC West. So we'll see. I have the Arizona Cardinals in that fact. The Buffalo Bills at 10-2 and 4-point favorites make the cross-country trip as they play the Los Angeles Rams, who are 6-6. The Rams had a decent showing last week against the New Orleans Saints, but that was definitely a game they should have played better in, considering what they have on offense and defense. But they got the win nonetheless. It was a tough one. But again, you take the win when you can. When the division race is this close, you take any win you can get. Meanwhile, Buffalo just clinched their division race. They have won the AFC East for the 5th straight year after the win against the San Francisco 49ers in what was a dominant showing by the Bills in the cold in Buffalo on Sunday Night Football. And Josh Allen just continues to be Josh Allen and playing insane. He is a literal Buffalo playing for the Buffalo Bills. He can run you over. He can pass over. He can pass over you no matter where you are in the field. He can catch over you, even hell. He's playing phenomenally well. This Bills team as a whole is playing phenomenally well. I do think Josh Allen deserves the MVP this season, but I still do not see him getting talked about nearly as much as he should be for it, which is crazy to me. This Bills defense is playing phenomenally well, and they're just going to keep getting better. As Matt Milano, who I'm pretty sure made his appearance again last week, he's just getting healthier and healthier, going to keep on making plays for them when they can and when they need him. And this defense, they just have a lot of fantastic pieces that I like. The offense is playing really well despite everything. Joe Brady's gonna be a top name for a head coaching job in the offseason, I think. And that will be an interesting sequence of events if it does take place of what Buffalo does with it. But focus is on this season. I have the Bills winning this game. And listen, I feel like you could put Buffalo in legit any city in the world and they will win a game there. Because that's just their style of play. They do not care where they're at. As long as they're on a football field, they will kick your ass. So I have the Bills winning this game in SoFi. The Chicago Bears at 4-8 make the trip to San Francisco, who are 5-7 and 3.5-point favorites. And this is an interesting game. The Bears in particular are in a weird situation. They fired Matt Eberflus after 3 straight really tough divisional losses, including a blocked field goal, an overtime loss, and just really bad clock management against the Lions. But they have the talent. The fact that they were in all those close games against 3 really, really good teams shows that they have the talent to compete. Caleb Williams is playing really well despite everything. He is showing that he can be a good quarterback in the league, although his style isn't the most traditional in the sense of it's not pocket passing really. It's more so that college style still. So we'll see how it continues to progress. But it's working. It's fun. It's fun to watch. It's working. Would like to see him eventually again mold into a quarterback who's willing to just make the smarter play. But that comes with time and comes with good coaching, which hopefully he will have now that Matt Eberflus is fired. San Francisco, a tough loss to Buffalo. They're just banged up to high hell. DMC is dealing with a PCL injury, and that just sucks to hear about because he came back like 3 weeks ago. but it's rough for San Francisco. They're in a tough spot right now. Nothing's really going their way this season. I have the Bears winning this game because of it. Again, Chicago has been in really tight games against really, really good teams. I think they're going to keep it up. They're a good team. They have shown to be a good team. They were 4-3 at one point of this season, and they were on my power rankings. But they just have tough loss after tough loss after tough loss. At some point, they're gonna win, and I feel like with Matt Eberflus finally being out of the building, it's going to rejuvenate this team. They're going to finally put things together and play a full 60 minutes or 60 plus if they need to for overtime. But I do have the Bears winning this game. And again, the Niners are just injured to high hell. Sunday night football. The Los Angeles Chargers at 8-4 make the trip to Kansas City, who are 11-1 and 4-point favorites. Both of these teams' offenses the previous week were pretty much no-shows. I mean, the Chiefs put up 19 against the Raiders defense, who can be a good defense at times, but for the most part, you really shouldn't be struggling that much against them. The Chargers offense was a complete no-show, especially in that second half against the Falcons. But it was their defense who played really well and got them the win. And this could be a very good defensive matchup. I'm not fully sure about what the situation will look like. All I know is the Chiefs' run game is still there, and it is still a good run game. Meanwhile, the Chargers' run game has been non-existent for the past game and a half, ever since J.K. Dobbins went down. J.K. Dobbins, for as much as I really like how he plays and as much as I respect him, he is a massive, massive piece of that Chargers run offense for a really no reason. The main thing is he's just better ball carrier vision than any other backs on that team. So he can hit holes and explode through them better than most backs on that Chargers roster, if all of them. But I still think that if the Chargers want to win this game, they're going to need their offense in general to show up. That includes Justin Herbert passing the ball a lot better than he did against the Falcons. I do have the Chiefs winning this game just because it is the Chiefs. Their devil magic is at work. They're going to find ways to win games no matter what, especially when they're being played in Kansas City. So I have Mahomes, I have the Chiefs, and if they win through some batshit crazy way, I wouldn't be surprised. And to wrap things up, Monday Night Football between the Cincinnati Bengals at 4-8 and 5.5-point favorites, and the Dallas Cowboys, who are 5-7. This is going to be a really interesting game. It is Monday Night Football. They have the Simpsons alt broadcast for this game, which I have no idea what to expect from. But this is going to come down to just how much you trust that Bengals defense. Cooper Rush has been playing serviceable the past few weeks, nothing really special, but he did have good wins against the Commanders and the Giants. The Cowboys defense is playing better than they have most of the season, but it's still not up to the point where I can call them an elite level defense like they probably should be otherwise. Meanwhile, Cincy's offense is one of the best offenses in the league, yet they still find themselves at 4-8 because their defense is one of the worst defenses in the league. So the question is just, can Cooper Rush and that Cowboys offense take advantage of it? I'm not really sure. Because here's the thing. Let's say they are able to take advantage of it. They're still going to need to put up roughly 35 plus to beat this Bengals team that has an offense that can score 30 plus with very much ease on any given Sunday. Like, they are not scared to just sling the ball and say we have one of the best receivers on the field at this time. I'm saying one of the best because CeeDee Lamb's on the other sideline, and while he hasn't been playing well this season, he's still a really good receiver. I am going to pick the Bengals to win this game because I do not trust Cooper Rush to win a shootout by any means of imagination. So I do think at some point the Bengals will just outwear the Cowboys offense out through their own offense. At some point, that defense is going to make a stand and make a stop. And at that point, when the Bengals get up 2 scores on you, it's very tough to come back when their offense is playing this well. So I have the Bengals to win this game. There you have it. Those are my predictions for week 14 of the NFL season. Thank you all for stopping in. You know the whole YouTube spiel I said at the beginning of this video. And I'll see you all next time. Have yourselves a damn good one. Peace.